Hello, everyone. As we have people probably joining us from all around the world, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar on Tennessee's transformation to a performance-based workforce, and this will be presented by Rebecca Hunter. So I'm going to go through a little bit of an introduction. Rebecca, can you advance the slide, please? So today's webinar is brought to you by the American Society for Quality, ASQ, and the ASQ Government Division. I will be moderating today's webinar. I'm the chairman of the ASQ Government Division, and my name is Mark Thorson. So ASQ represents the voice of quality throughout the world with over 80,000 members. The Government Division is one out of 26 divisions within the society. You are more than welcome to check out our website around the Government Division, the ASQ Government Division under ASQ. The Government Division is a community of practitioners focused on quality and performance improvement for federal, state, local, and international governments. We are composed of government leaders and employees, seasoned experts, consultants, practitioners, university professors, students, and others engaged with or interested in the public sector. So we would hope that you join our community. We have been doing webinars every month for quite some time, all last year. And in fact, we have another webinar coming up next month on February 11 called the Implementation of the Evidence-Based Policymaking Act. And that will be presented by Diana Epstein, who's actually with the Office of Management and Budget, the federal OMB. You can look at or find many of the webinars. They are any that are coming up. You can go to the Government Division website and learn more about what's coming up and register for them on our website. And you could also earn 0.1 recertification units for those that are interested in doing that by attending these webinars. So more webinars will be announced soon, so stay tuned. So for today's webinar, when you have, hopefully a bunch of you will have some questions, and feel free to use the Q&A tab to send in any questions that you have during the webinar. At the conclusion of the webinar, I will be watching for those questions, and I'll relay those questions to Rebecca. And we'll have probably about 10 to 15 minutes at the end to address as many questions as we can. At the end of the presentation, there'll be a slide that has a listing of some of our division officers and contact information, as well as the contact information of our speaker today. So feel free to check that out and reach out to us after the webinar if you have additional questions. Most of our presentations are available for download within a few days of the webinar. So what I'm going to do now is introduce Rebecca Hunter. Let me tell you a little bit about Rebecca. Rebecca Hunter served on the Tennessee Governor's Bill Haslam's cabinet as Commissioner of the Department of Human Resources for 8 years. Prior to this appointment, she spent 6 years as the Director of Human Resources for Hamilton County Government in Chattanooga and held management positions in government finance for over 25 years. Rebecca is a certified public accountant as well as a certified senior professional in human resources. During her tenure with state government, Rebecca established the Department of Human Resources as a leader in innovative human resource practices while shaping the best workforce for state government. She led a successful effort to transform the state's employment practices with the passage of the TEAM Act, which has moved the state from a focus on seniority to a focus on performance. And that will be a key aspect for discussion today. As a result, all state employees have a SMART performance plan, which aligns their work with the agency goals and the governor's priorities. Rebecca is passionate about customer service and performance excellence and extends her leadership to service on various boards and associations. For example, she serves on the board of the Tennessee Center for Performance Excellence, whose mission is to drive organizational excellence in Tennessee. And her bio continues. She has much to be proud of. She received several awards, and here are just a couple of them. In 2016, she received an award for HR Executive of the Year in Tennessee. In 2018, she was honored by the Tennessee Government Leadership Council with the inaugural Rebecca Hunter Award for Leadership Excellence. So, without further ado, I'm going to pass on the presentation to Rebecca Hunter. So thank you. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Mark. Can everyone hear me?
I hear you fine, Rebecca. Rebecca, I don't hear you at this point. Is it possible that you went on mute?
Hi, this is the host for this presentation. There's a small technical difficulty Rebecca is having at this point. Just give us a moment, and she's trying to test her audio and connect back again. Thank you for your patience.
Hello, folks. This is Mark Burson. We're still working on getting the technical difficulties worked out. I appreciate your patience. Hopefully this will be worked out in a couple seconds or minutes.
Can you hear me now?
I do, Rebecca. I hear you now.
Excellent.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much, and I apologize for the technical difficulties. And I'm excited. Just want to say that I'm excited to be here with you all today. As Mark shared, I have been passionate about performance improvement and performance excellence throughout my entire career, and was excited to be a part of what you all are trying to do to improve performance excellence in the public sector. So today, what I'd like to share with you, if we can get our slides to advance. Let me get these to go down. I want to speak first to the critical need and the sense of urgency for civil service reform in Tennessee, and that led to, ironically, a huge focus on customer focus, and also share with you all how critically important we felt a really strong performance management plan and paying people for performance was to our success, and then how important learning and development is and why it should never be the last item that's cut from a budget. So I want to start with the need and sense of urgency, and there were three things that you see here on the screen that we started back in 2011 when Governor Haslam first became governor. And the first was he asked each cabinet member to do a top-to-bottom review of their agency, asking themselves first if each of the programs that were being run could be run more effectively in the private sector, and if we determined that they were best run in the public sector, were they being run as efficiently and effectively as they could be run? And we had some time to be able to compile that information together. While that was going on, the Commissioner of Finance, who had been the former CEO for Bridgestone Americas, realized that state employees weren't really recognizing citizens as customers. And he sent out a survey to all executive branch agencies asking for their ideas on how to improve efficiency. And then just to wrap it up, in that first year, the deputy governor and I went on a statewide employee listening tour. We went to our 4 major cities and met with state employees, and I can remember the deputy governor saying, we really are here to listen to you all. And what we asked them to share with us was their ideas on how to recruit and retain the best employees. And all 3 of these initiatives were really supportive of, if we did not do what was necessary based on the feedback from each of these to implement civil service reform, that the governor would never be able to achieve his priorities in an effective and efficient way. So I'm going to address first, because I think it was interesting. It was one we didn't anticipate, but I'm going to address customer, our real huge focus on customers. And I mentioned the survey that the Commissioner of Finance sent out, and he got back almost 700 responses, almost half of which were around our antiquated employment practices. But he got back so many that he realized, I need some folks to help me really place a focus on the survey and determine where we really need to prioritize. So he convened a group of cabinet members and called them Customer-Focused Government Committee, and we began collaborating on cross-agency issues that we knew typically if one agency was dealing with them, it was probably impacting other agencies as well. But I think this was the beginning of a huge focus on collaboration across the executive branch agency, which many other state governments I think were somewhat envious of. So that led to a creation of basically an Office of Customer-Focused Government, and it started off with one employee who was a dynamic young man who really wanted to do some transformational work. And so the office was created, as you can see, to determine the strategies we should pursue and help us to implement the operational improvements. In 2013, the governor hired a chief operating officer for the first time for state government, and he came in and realized that we really should, as a state, be focused on customers, and it should be a mindset, not an initiative. And so he expanded that committee, which was maybe 2 handfuls of cabinet members, to include the entire cabinet. And in the state of Tennessee, there are 24 cabinet members. And so we began meeting monthly as a group to focus on operations. And this was in addition to the governor's monthly cabinet meetings where we discussed policy and placed a focus on his priorities. And I'll speak more to the last bullet as we get further into this PowerPoint, but ultimately the Office of Customer-Focused Government became responsible for collecting and supporting customer-focused goals, which are the agency's strategic and operational goals for cabinet agencies. And I think you'll appreciate the slide that I'll be able to share with you that we think help to drive performance improvement and performance excellence for the state. So I mentioned each of those 3 initiatives. Something else that came out in the middle of all of those was a surprising survey from the Department of Economic and Community Development, which was seeking feedback about regulations on business, but resulted in addition to feedback on the regulations, also resulted in extensive feedback about the poor customer service that the state was providing. And so you see that very first bulletin, what we were hearing was we weren't recognizing citizens as customers, and every governmental entity is truly a service entity. And so the customer-focused government, it was the committee at that time, said, we really think we need to provide some training to state employees on what customer service truly looks like. And we based it on, there's a great book called 1 Minute Service that were the keys to providing great customer service at Disney World. And what was really good about this curriculum was it helped us to promote a shared definition of customer service, have a shared language around it, and understanding of what great customer service is. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that GREAT acronym, it's greet, relate, exceed, acknowledge, and thank. And we utilized agency leaders to teach the workshops. We asked each cabinet member to think about people in their agencies who might not, as part of their daily routine, be instructors or presenters, but were well respected and would be good at doing this kind of thing, because that was the only way we were going to get a mandatory across-the-board customer service training done in a reasonable amount of time. And what was great about that was a lot of those leaders, and they could be at all levels, you know, supervisor, manager, director. It was interesting how many people stepped up and wanted to be a part of this, because it gave them something to contribute to beyond just their normal program area. And it is now a mandatory workshop for all state employees. So, and what's been exciting about it is really helped state employees understand, even as they come in, because it's that mandatory workshop, they're required to take it within the first 3 to 6 months of hire, and they understand that we are here to serve. So the 3 initiatives I mentioned, it led us to recognize that we needed to do civil service reform, and the bill itself was called the TEAM Act, the Tennessee Excellence, Accountability, and Management Act. And I shared the language, a couple of statements from the Act, because I thought they were just so critically important to what we were trying to achieve. And we actually called it, we began to refer to the Act as the 3 R's, recruit, retain, and reward, because that was what it was about, was enable to us to recruit qualified talent, retain them through, you'll see, for us it was learning, really placing a focus on learning and development, and then reward them for performance. This is a second statement from the Act that I thought was really great, because the cabinet members, as they went to through their top to bottom reviews, were really focused on that effectiveness and efficiency piece in order to do the best jobs they could do for the state of Tennessee. So these are the 6 key areas that we focused on, and I'm going to spend the bulk of my time on the last 3, but I'm going to just share briefly with you what we did at a high level with each of them. For hiring practices, we eliminated scoring applications. That listening tour that we went on, we heard from supervisors who said, you all are sending us, based on rules and laws, the top 3 or top 5 candidates that apply for a position. And we'd really rather see everybody who's qualified and be able to hire them based on knowledge, skills, abilities, and competencies. So we literally changed the law to, obviously they have to meet the minimum qualifications, but we developed a group of, we basically sat down and said, okay, here's what knowledge will look like, here's what skills will look like, here's what abilities will look like, and here are the competencies that are needed for the roles. And we also, basically what it did was took away a focus on seniority. And I know many people who don't understand why that was so important. I think what's critical to explain here is that we value experience in a role, but that experience has to produce results. It can't be just experience that continues to be rewarded based on how long the person has been in the role. There have to be results. We also implemented competency and behavioral-based interviewing for key positions, which was, I think, critical to our success. For reductions in force, we reduced the notice for a reduction in force from 90 days to 30 days. What we heard on that listening tour was it just gets people worked up to have that in place that long. It's not effective or efficient. We also eliminated bumping and retreating, if you all are familiar with those practices, and bottom line, placed a huge focus on performance. We took it from the first factor that you consider as seniority when you're looking at a reduction in force to performance, and we actually pulled people's performance management, their evaluations, and looked at them. And if they didn't reflect, for instance, I know once we implemented the law, there were people who would want to eliminate someone, and when we would look at their performance was fine. And so it became a component of the reduction in force, but also considered was disciplinary record, their abilities, and performance and seniority. Then for the employee appeals, it was a extremely cumbersome process that had 6 steps in it. The first 3 or 4 started in the agency. We reduced our employee appeals steps down to 3. And those 3 steps were first to the head of the department. The second was to me as the Commissioner of Human Resources, because I was surprised to find out that the central HR agency for the state was not involved in any of these. And the beauty of putting us at step 2 was it gave us that consistent look across the enterprise so we could see it from a statewide perspective, and we could make sure discipline was applied fairly and consistently. And we also, the third step was an employee board of appeals appointed by the governor and required the hearing for that third step within 120 days. So it really streamlined the process. We also implemented a mediation program, because what we found during all our research was that a lot of the issues that were coming before the old Civil Service Commission were really relational issues. And if we could get a mediation program in place, many of those could be funneled through that mechanism rather than through our employee appeals board. So the next 3, I actually have slides for each of them. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward to those. First, though, I love results, and I thought you all might like to see our results for recruiting. Remember, I mentioned the 3 R's: recruit, retain, and reward. So here's results for recruiting. What you see here are, on the far left, those are the postings for state jobs from fiscal year 14 through fiscal year 17. And you can see that we continued to post more and more jobs, but what we realized 2 years in, where we were really tracking the numbers, was that our applications were beginning to decline. And that's when we hired a recruiter for the first time. Because prior to changing the law, we would not have been able to hire anyone, say, straight out of college or anyone without state government experience, because that's where the focus was on people with state government experience. And so we hired a recruiter from the private sector, and what you see as a result of that is, even though applications continued to decline year over year, we think because of the economy returning, we continued to have an increase in hires. And so I love this slide because it lets you see the results of the change in our approach to recruiting. So I want to move to performance management, because I think this is another key area where if we hadn't gotten this one right, we would not have been able to have the success that occurred. The first thing we did was put in the law that every executive branch employee had to have SMART work outcomes in their performance plan. When I stepped into the role, 85% of state employees were earning 4s and 5s on a 5-tier scale, which really meant we should have been curing world hunger, not just hunger in the state of Tennessee, because that is not normal for a performance management plan. And so the people who were, we have two categories of employees. We have the executive service employees who serve at the will, and it's about 10%, and they're at the top of the job classifications. And then all the other employees are what we refer to as preferred service employees. And none of those executive service employees were being evaluated. So we said, okay, it's critical that the people doing the evaluating must be evaluated as well. They also had to be aligned, as you can see, with the governor's priorities and the agency's strategic and operational goals. And we knew, since we had 85% of state employees earning those 4s and 5s, we probably needed just to get rid of the numbers, because people felt like achieving a 3 was like getting a C in school. And so we were really thoughtful about how we should label those 5. We kept the 5 tiers, and the bottom tier is now unacceptable. The next one is needs improvement. That middle one, as you can see, we refer to as valued, because if your performance management system is functioning as it should, that's where the bulk of your people are going to be classified, is at that valued level, and you've got to have your valued people. And those are the people that are doing the job you hired them to do. The next level is advanced. Those are the people that are going above and beyond. And then the highest level is outstanding. And in order to achieve an outstanding, you have to have contributed in a measurable way to the goals of the organization. And as you can see in that next bullet, the department head has to sign off on both that outstanding rating and any unacceptable ratings. We also added a reviewer role to the process. And just to give you an example, so the chief learning officer reported to me, and I was the one that would evaluate her. And then her direct reports, she was the rater for them, but I was the reviewer. And what was really good about having that reviewer role is it let you see across your areas of responsibility if there were outliers or folks who, as you all are familiar, folks who are biased towards an employee or a group of employees. It really was helpful, and I actually learned a lot as I went through that reviewer role, understanding what folks 2 levels down were doing to help drive our goals. We also made it not an annual event. Performance management, we always said, was a journey, and one of the things we heard on that employee listening tour, it was sad to hear people share with me that their supervisor wouldn't talk to them. And so we said, okay, we're going to make sure they have to talk at least 4 times a year. That first one is when you sit down with the employee and set the expectations with those 4 to 6 SMART work outcomes. And what was great about the way our system worked is your folks at your higher level are actually developing their own work outcomes and submitting them to you for approval. You can't always do that, as I'm sure you're aware, with frontline employees. For instance, we brought in some coaches to help us with our correction officers, so we'd have consistent work outcomes across the department. And then the second and third step are both interim conversations where you're just touching base with your employees to make sure that there aren't roadblocks, things haven't changed. You know, sometimes, as you all are fully aware, you might have to change an outcome or a goal in the middle of the year because of things beyond your control that you couldn't have possibly planned for. And then, of course, the final touch point is the rating itself. And the last thing you see on there is that we made performance evaluations exempt from public record. And I think this was really critical to our success, because that was something else we heard on the listening tour, was supervisors talking about how difficult it was to be a first-time supervisor, and they're now having to evaluate the people they used to shop or shoot with, and how critically important it was for them to not have that be splashed all over the news if they had to give their employees some critical feedback. So then I love this next slide, because what you see here is a real great visual of how our system worked. And you can see our governor's priorities, and he had 5. And then you see how they feed into the customer-focused government plans, which for me, for my department, those were my SMART goals. And they were our customer-focused government plan in the Department of Human Resources had typically 2 or 3 strategic goals and 2 or 3 operational goals. And I was evaluated on those. Those cascaded down to my direct reports, and they cascaded all the way down to the frontline employees, so that every employee, we actually put in the system the governor's priorities, and then we put the department's strategic and operational goals in there, and there were drop-down boxes. There are drop-down boxes for the supervisors to select which of these do they align with, and that way the employee could see, not only am I contributing to my department's strategic and operational goals, but for instance, in the Department of Human Resources, as you can imagine, the 2 that we connected with were education and workforce development and fiscal strength and efficient government. And so I really like how this portrays the cascading of governor's priorities all the way through the department's strategic and operational goals, clear down to the employees. And each commissioner had to sit down with the governor and talk about their performance as it related to those departmental SMART goals. So I thought you would love, the accountant in me always loves to show some results, and so I thought you'd like to see how we impacted performance management over the last several years. That long red line that's the 72.9%, that was the first year. And it was actually a practice year. All our research said if you're going to pay for performance, SMART goals are difficult. You've got to practice. We actually practiced for 3 years before we paid for performance. And as we got close to the end, right before it was actually going to be implemented, employees were saying, really, are y'all really going to pay us for performance? But you can see that we took it from 85% of state employees getting 4s and 5s on a 5-tier scale to more like 85 or 90% of employees getting valued and advanced. And what I love about this slide is it shows you that as we continue to work on the performance management system through a continuous improvement process, we found more and more employees who, as they began to be rewarded for their work, were striving to achieve higher and higher goals. And you can see that the valued level actually reduced while the advanced and outstanding level increased. And I have had some people say, well, how do you know that wasn't just people getting more comfortable with giving those higher ratings? And we actually would go out and audit 10% of each department's SMART goals to determine if they were in fact written as they should be, and then we'd work with the department to develop a plan to improve based on our findings. And that might mean more coaching. It might mean sitting down and holding a workshop with a specific group of supervisors to fine-tune the SMART goals. But you can, what I love about it is it really demonstrates the results that we were getting. So that brings us to pay for performance, and here you see the second R, the reward piece. And I thought it would be interesting to share with you straight from the TEAM Act what we were trying to do when it came to rewarding for performance. And you see here I share again that we practiced those SMART goals for 3 years. Also thought it was critical for you to know that if you achieved an unacceptable or needs improvement on your performance plan, you were not eligible for pay for performance. And I love this slide because it kind of shows you how we transitioned. In the very beginning, across the board raises, that's what was happening when we walked in. And until we could get everything in place, we pretty much had to continue that. But we began transitioning to a market and performance-based compensation philosophy in fiscal year 2014 because we did a major salary survey, and you can see how many people, 36,000 out of about 40,000 state employees got, or maybe 45,000, I guess, received some type of a market adjustment, and that was a pretty nice average of 4.93%. And then you can see in fiscal year 2016, it was actually January of 2015 because our fiscal year ended June 30, is the first time we paid for performance. What else you can see here is we transitioned. If you look in that fiscal year 2016, we were doing flat percentages for each tier. And as we continued to evaluate the process, we transitioned to giving an across the board of a certain percentage for valued and above, and then a one-time bonus for advanced and outstanding. And the great thing about that was it made it more fiscally sustainable, and because you weren't adding to the base for those 1% and 3% that you see there in fiscal year 2018. And it also sent the message that employees have to earn it each year. The governor loved this next slide because he really, from the very beginning, said the team with the best players wins, and he knew that we had to be competitive with our compensation in order to retain great employees. And what you see here is we increased the average salary by $10,000 during his tenure with state government, and he was really proud of that because he was able to recognize employees for the great work that they were doing. I wanted to share with you, too, that we didn't just stop with the initial launch of performance management. We love to go and get feedback from our customers and say, okay, what do you think? What could be improved? And so we launched Performance Management 2.0 in 2017. We met with focus groups of employees, supervisors, our performance management coordinators from each agency, all of our CHROs, and our cabinet, even our cabinet, and got feedback from them. And I was so proud of the team because they launched it with a movie teaser, and then we launched weekly videos after that were done by the governor, by me, our chief learning officer, and even state employees who stepped up to say, hey, we love the performance management system. We love that we're being rewarded. We don't mind helping out with videos. And we also, based on feedback, added competencies and behaviors. And you see there that customer focus is the first one we tackled. Every executive branch employee is now being rated on customer focus, and supervisors are being rated on developing direct reports. And we got really good feedback when we launched this from supervisors. This is one of the best things, because so many of them didn't realize when you step into that supervisor role what all is expected of you. That it's not just about you anymore, it's about helping your employees be the best they can be. And then we also got feedback that employees wanted to be able to initiate comments at both interims and before their final rating instead of at the very end of the cycle. And that actually was very helpful, because employees will remind you of things that you may have forgotten about. So that brings us to the last major initiative, and you see this is what I refer to as the retain piece. Learning and development, we placed a huge focus on it over the 8 years. We put in the act that the professional development was the purview of DOHR, because what we found was that different agencies were teaching, say, coaching different ways, and we wanted a shared language again. We wanted a learning organization, and so we created the Tennessee Government Leadership Council, which was made up of employees from various agencies. They have to apply to be on it, and it was wonderful because, again, it helped them step out of their routine program areas and help the Department of Human Resources drive leadership development for the state. That group meets monthly with the Chief Learning Officer. You see we created that role. And our CLO would meet with agency heads to assess their needs and create development programs. And one of the things, you'll see a slide of it here in a minute, that we're really proud of is that leadership and management learning pyramid to really help supervisors develop in their roles. And you'll be able to see what that looks like. It's a 4-tier system. So this is what was in place from a workforce development perspective before the TEAM Act. And I'm really proud to share that this is what was in place when I stepped out of the role at the end of the beginning of 2019. And you see all the cool things. That council that I mentioned earlier that we started, every place you see TGL on this screen, they launched a Toastmasters Club for state government employees. They created lunch and learns where state leaders would come and speak about what leadership meant to them. They created a leadership book club, which has just gone, that group fills up within 30 minutes of sending the email out. And then, of course, you see the leadership and management learning period. And the Baldrige Awards, that was the way that me as the head of a non-revenue producing agency, I knew we had to demonstrate our value. That was the tool that we used to really drive performance excellence in our department and be of service to our customers. So I'm going to just show you this slide real quickly. Here's the pyramid I mentioned. You can see that that level 1, it's actually mandatory for all supervisors, and the other 3 are voluntary, but the chief operations officer, when he would meet a state leader, he'd say, where are you on the leadership pyramid? And it kind of got a nice little competition going. I also have another slide that I really love because it shows how, just from a graphical perspective, how we placed an increased focus on development. This is the alumni participation and post-graduation activities, so all those things that I mentioned earlier. One of the things that TGL Council created was Black Belt, Leadership Black Belt program. Then I love this one because we kept hearing from people that they got promoted. If it hadn't been for Lead Tennessee, or if it hadn't been for any number of our leadership development programs, they would not have gotten a raise. And so I finally said, let's pull the promotions and see what that looks like. And as you can see here on this slide, the bar continues to increase. Where you see the blip in 2015 where it went down, in 2015 where it went up and then back down, the reason it went up so high in 2015 is we actually did a voluntary buyout that resulted in reorganizations across the executive branch and a lot of promotions into new roles. So love this slide. This came from a Price Waterhouse Cooper survey and report on the future of work, managing tomorrow's people and reshaping the workplace, and it just totally reinforced for us the direction that we had been going, where you see the #1 thing that the folks that we're trying to recruit into the workforce today, they want training and development. You all are familiar with everybody wanting flexible hours or the flexibility to work remotely. the cash bonuses tied in beautifully to our pay for performance. So really love this slide. And then this is just a great graphic of evidence of how we really were making progress towards that learning organization. I'm not going to go into all these, but if you all want to talk with me about any of them, as Mark said, he'll give you my contact information. So just to wrap it all up, this is what we learned about it. Our goal was to become an employer of choice. And we felt the performance management system was critical to our success, where we could set those expectations, hold employees accountable, and then reward for performance. We learned pretty quickly that the workforce coming in today, they want to be able to, they want you to kind of give them some guidelines and turn them loose, but give them value-added work experience. They don't want to be stood over. And then you see the learning and development. I've talked extensively about that, and leaders have to be change agents and adaptable learners. They have to understand what their role is about, and then, of course, the competitive compensation and benefits. So that concludes my remarks, and I am happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
Well, thank you so much, Rebecca. That was a fantastic presentation. And I think we do have some questions, and I would encourage others, if you have any questions, send them through the Q&A, and I will convey those to Rebecca. One of the questions that did come through is the workforce unionized?
No, that's a great question. We do have a state employee association which functions like a union, but Tennessee is not a union state, and we did have to work. I will tell you, as we worked on the, as we lobbied for the bill in the state legislature, we worked extensively with the State Employee Association and negotiated with them so that we could successfully launch the reform.
Okay, thank you. Also, let's see, I'm looking at some of the other questions here. Well, one of the things that occurs to me, and I'm always trying to make a connection to, why is this important to the government division, the ASQ government division? Because, I mean, really, it's all about, what the ASQ government division tends to focus on is performance and quality improvement in government. So, I mean, would you concur that by shifting to a pay-for-performance system, that it motivated most employees to want to find ways to make improvements, essentially helping to drive a culture of performance excellence? Could you comment on that?
Yes, I think you are absolutely right. I think what was really critical to our success was sharing with the employees the direction that we were headed. And so our department tried to model the way, since we were the one driving the performance management system, and I would always share with our employees, here's our mission, here's our vision, we've revisited those annually, here are our values, and let's talk about why these are our strategic and operational goals and how you can contribute to them. And we got more positive feedback about that, them feeling like they were actually a part of the strategic and operational goals, and giving them the freedom to generate ideas that we might have never thought of that really helped us succeed as a team. So I think it's that really opening up the communication piece and helping people feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves, and help them understand where the department's trying to go and why this is important.
Great. Another, and I love this question because it's very important to get grounded in why you did all of this. What prompted you and your team to embark on this journey to begin with?
Well, it was really kind of directives to begin with. As you can see, the governor, with his top to bottom review, we knew as our team did a review of our agency in that first year, I asked for feedback from the employees, and this is kind of their opportunity to tell us things that they thought needed to be changed. And then, of course, the survey results from the Commissioner of Finance reinforced that, as well as the listening tour. And with all three of those basically conveying the same message through different methods, we felt we were compelled to change the law. One thing I didn't share that I think might be critical for you all to know is this was not a Department of Human Resources bill. Each year the governor would have 5 or 6 bills that were his bills, and although we collaborated with my senior team and his senior team collaborated to create the bill, and then we collaborated to lobby for the bill, everyone in the legislature, the State Employee Association, everyone knew it was the governor's bill, which I think it's that whole thing about having that support at the top to get done what you need to get done. And I think had it been DOHR's bill, it would have been just another HR initiative that we were trying to drive without the support that we needed. But with it being Governor Haslam's bill, we were bound and determined that it was going to succeed, and it even resulted in any cabinet member who might not have been as on board as we would have liked for them to be. It really helped there as well, because it wasn't DOHR's bill, it was the governor's bill.
Makes total sense. Rebecca, here's another question for you. How was cost increase addressed with the evolution of what you all were doing?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that, please?
How was any increases in cost addressed with the evolution of, as you mentioned that it increased salaries by $10,000 on average, and there might have been other cost increases. How was that addressed?
That was always done through the budget process, and the Department of Human Resources would partner with the Department of Finance and the governor's office to determine what could we afford to give and what were those raises going to look like. And I think what was really exciting about the 8 years, there was only 1 year when we were not able to give raises of any kind. And I know when we stepped into office, the state employees had gone 3 years without raises. So it became a routine part of the budget process. And I learned when I was making my budget presentations to both the governor and to the legislative committees to not start off with numbers, to actually tell the story and demonstrate the need. So if you were to watch my budget presentations, there was a lot of storytelling and helping them understand why we were asking for what we were asking for. And a great example of that is the year we asked for more folks in our learning and development area. I think we asked for 6 additional people. When we went before the Senate Finance Committee, we didn't even get 1 question. And my team said, well, we told the story well. So it really became critical to, during that budget process, have that ability to demonstrate the need and show results of the work that you were doing.
Okay. That totally makes sense also. And in fact, related to the cost question, were you, because of these changes and people striving for performance improvement, were you gaining efficiencies elsewhere? Were you able to reduce costs in other places by doing things better?
That's a really good question, because one slide that's not in here but I've used before, we actually were able to do this with less employees. Because as we automated more things, as we got more, we implemented lean initiatives. We partnered with the state university to get folks trained in lean, and frontline employees love lean events because it lets them contribute to process improvement on that frontline level and see that, hey, we've got way too many handoffs in this process. So we did lean events and things of that nature that would help the actual employees doing the work be a part of making the process improvement to make it more effective and efficient.
Fantastic. I can completely relate to that, as I'm an industrial engineer and I'm a Lean Six Sigma kind of person. Got another question for you here. What concessions did the State Employee Association demand to secure their buy-in?
Oh gosh, you're asking me to go back 9 years. So the one that was really intriguing to me. Remember, I shared that we wanted to go from a focus on seniority to a focus on knowledge, skills, abilities, and competencies. And they really pushed back on that and wanted us just to focus on abilities. And as far as the reductions in force, they didn't want us to look at knowledge, skills, abilities, and competencies, only abilities. And so we agreed to do that. And ironically, it didn't cause a problem because our biggest focus was going to be on performance management. And sometimes supervisors, as I believe I shared, would think that they were going to get rid of an employee through the risk process, but they hadn't been effectively documenting whether or not they were performing as they should. And so we would deny it at the central HR shop if, in fact, the employees' performance evaluations looked as if they were performing, but the department was trying to basically get rid of them without effectively documenting why they were doing it.
Makes sense. Another question for you is, what kind of resistance, if any, did you face while implementing your programs?
I think the biggest, and I don't even know if I would call it resistance, we kept hearing from, we would hear from TSEA members, so state employees who were members of TSEA, and the TSEA themselves, that's the Tennessee State Employee Association, and then ultimately from legislators, because that's where TSEA would go to try to get things changed. We kept hearing that employees didn't know how to get above a 3, and of course I would have to start off by saying, well, let's talk about valued, because we were really trying to eliminate those numerical ratings. And what we realized was our supervisors needed more training in how to coach people to higher performance. And so we had to come back and create, we'd already held all the SMART workshops that were mandatory for all executive branch employees. We had to create a new curriculum called Get Smarter that really helped supervisors coach employees to higher performance, because what we didn't want to do was be prescriptive about what valued, advanced, and outstanding looks like. You all know from experience that if you have to tell your employees everything they need to do, that takes up way too much of your time. You want folks who are going to get in there and always be looking for ways to make things better, coming up with creative ideas. And so it really was helping equip supervisors with tools that they could use to coach employees to higher performance. And once we did that and made that training available, that we didn't get the feedback about people don't know what to do to get a 3 anymore.
Excellent. Rebecca, I have one last question for you. What's the current state in Tennessee? I mean, have the laws and practices put in place been sustained? Because one of the things that we're keenly focused on is, when a good program has been put into place in government, one of the things that we find happens sometimes is that it's not sustainable. And so I'm curious, to what extent has Tennessee been able to sustain the programs?
Absolutely. So they have actually paid for performance again in 2020. And I think what's driving that sustainability, Mark, is both laws, not only the TEAM Act, but back in 2013, we partnered with the General Assembly to create a law that basically drives the strategic and operational goal process. It's called the Accountability Act, and it stipulates that every executive branch agency has to submit their strategic and operational goals to the finance commissioner, which he has oversight for those CFG goals. And so it's in the law that you have to have strategic and operational goals And then in the TEAM Act, those have to be aligned with the strategic and operational goals. So I think that has helped to sustain the performance management process. They're able to see that goals are being achieved and employees understand how their work contributes to that bigger picture through both of those laws.
And as part of that, what has made it where it's not just a check-the-box exercise, but rather what has really, made it where it's ingrained in the culture? You know what I mean?
I do. I think it's because it starts at the top. Both the governor and the cabinet see the value of having those strategic and operational goals that are driven by the governor's priorities and cascade all the way down to the front employee, and they talk about it. And the fact that each cabinet member, I think, is having to be held accountable as well for the department's strategic and operational goals is critical. That was not occurring before. And so if you think about it, your average state employee isn't going to get excited about a performance management process that seems to only apply to them. And with it starting at the top, with the governor's priorities driving the cabinet members' strategic and operational goals, and it cascading all the way down to the front line, they've got a vested interest in it, they being cabinet. So your leadership is really critically involved in it and supporting it from the very top. And in fact, the new governor has come in and said, I actually want you guys to come up with 4-year strategical goals, because he wants to see what that would look like for his first term in office. So I think what they've been able to see is the results that have been achieved. Tennessee has achieved some pretty exciting results from a nationwide perspective on one of the best managed states, best funded pension plan, and you can just go down the list. And they're able to see those results, which are really being driven by the strategic and operational goals and the performance management system aligned to that.
Well, Rebecca, I for one have thoroughly enjoyed this presentation. I'm sure that most everyone on this call or on the web have done the same. They've really enjoyed this, I'm sure. And I thank you. I thank you very, very much for your time and effort on all of this, and for your service. So with that, I'd like to just say, I hope everyone has a fantastic rest of their day, and we're signing off at this point. So thank you very much. Bye now.
Mark, can you say that?
Yeah.
Can you tell about how the slide deck and the recordings would be available?
Oh, yes. So we will be posting the presentation, and it has been recorded. So it should be posted on the Government Division website in the next few days. And so I encourage people to check it out, go to our website, and also download a copy. And stay tuned for the next webinars that will be coming up.
Thank you, Mark. And thank you, everyone, for your patience.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.